Lewis Hamilton just did something in Bahrain that even Ferrari did not expect. In preseason testing, with no points on the line, he activated a rear wing that gains around 12 kilometers per hour on the straight without using extra battery. And according to internal estimates, the full package could be worth up to half a second per lap. Half a second. In modern Formula One, that is not an upgrade. That is a power shift. But here is the part nobody saw coming. When Hamilton came back into the garage, Vasseur was silent. Leclerc walked straight to the rear of the car, because what they just felt was not normal. This is not traditional DRS. It is a rotating, near-inverted rear wing exploiting a regulatory gray zone. It changes straight line speed. It changes corner balance. And it might already be forcing rival teams to consider redesigning major components before the first race. If this stays legal, Ferrari does not just become competitive. They become dangerous. And by the end of this video, you will understand why this preseason test in Bahrain could define the entire championship before the lights even go out for race 1. Subscribe now, because what happens next could decide the season. What happened next was even more revealing, because this was not just about straight line speed. It was about behavior. When Hamilton went out for his first proper run, engineers expected correlation work, fuel mapping, system checks, standard preseason procedure. Instead, within a handful of laps, the speed trap numbers started flashing, consistently higher than expected. Not once, not with a toe, but repeatedly. That is when the garage atmosphere changed, because reducing drag usually comes with a price. You trim rear wing, you gain top speed, but you sacrifice stability in the braking zone. You lose rear confidence on entry. Tire temperatures spike. None of that appeared in the data. Sector 2, the fast and flowing middle section of Bahrain, told a different story. The car was flat through direction changes. Minimal steering correction. No visible snap oversteer. Hamilton's throttle traces were clean, progressive, confident. And here is where things get serious. The rear wing is only half of the equation. Ferrari is actively shifting aerodynamic balance corner by corner. On entry, the front wing loads up first. The nose bites. The car rotates sharply. On exit, balance shifts rearward. Traction improves. It feels almost like active suspension, but achieved purely with airflow. And this is what shocked Vasseur, because this is not a small performance tweak. This is a philosophy change. For years, teams searched for compromise. Strong front end, but stable rear. Or stable rear, but softer rotation. Ferrari is dynamically switching between both. In real time. That is not easy to copy. It requires software precision, hydraulic control, structural integration, and most importantly, driver trust. Hamilton immediately began exploring that trust window, braking later, carrying more speed into apexes, testing how aggressive he could be before the balance shifted. That behavior matters, because when a driver feels uncertainty, they hold back. When they feel potential, they push. And he pushed. Leclerc noticed it too, because suddenly the reference lap he had said earlier did not feel untouchable. The internal competition inside Ferrari just intensified, and that internal pressure can be powerful. Two elite drivers, one radical concept, preseason testing, no hierarchy yet established. But here is the detail that makes this bigger than a team story. If Ferrari has solved the energy clipping issue by reducing drag, they gain strategic freedom. They can defend without overusing battery. They can attack without compromising later in the lap. They can manage temperatures more effectively. That compounds over race distance. And testing is where you discover whether that advantage is real. Right now, the numbers suggest it might be. But this is still preseason. Fuel loads are masked. Engine modes are conservative. Teams are not revealing full pace, which raises the uncomfortable question. If this is what Ferrari is showing publicly, how much are they holding back? Because in Formula One, you never expose your full hand before qualifying. And if Hamilton is already this comfortable, if the system is already this refined, then what happens when they remove the training wheels? That is what has people inside the paddock watching the SF26 more closely than any other car in Bahrain. Not because it is loud, not because it is dramatic, but because it feels deliberate. And deliberate innovation is the most dangerous kind. But here is where the story becomes even more complex. Because innovation does not exist in isolation. It creates consequences. And those consequences are already starting to ripple through the paddock. While Ferrari focuses on extracting performance, other teams are asking a very uncomfortable question. Can we even respond in time? This rear wing concept is not a bolt-on upgrade, is integrated into the structure of the car. Gearbox packaging, hydraulic routing, rear crash structure layout, software architecture. You cannot redesign that in a week. You cannot copy it between testing sessions. If this concept survives regulatory scrutiny, rivals are facing a strategic dilemma. Do they commit resources immediately, or do they wait and risk falling behind? And here is why that matters in preseason. The first race sets momentum. Momentum shapes development direction. If Ferrari starts strong, confidence grows internally. Budgets shift. Upgrade paths accelerate. If they stumble, uncertainty creeps in. Development focus becomes defensive. Right now, Ferrari feels aggressive. And that aggression is being driven, surprisingly, by Hamilton's adaptation speed. Because the early concern inside Maranello was simple. Would he need time? Would the transition require patience? Instead, in Bahrain, he looked comfortable almost immediately. Testing braking limits, experimenting with entry angles, trusting the rear on throttle. That sends a message, not just to Vasseur, not just to Leclerc, but to every engineer watching telemetry. When a driver leans into a concept early, the team leans with him. But there's still a shadow hanging over this entire story. Reliability. The system that controls the wing movement is complex. Hydraulic pressure, actuators, electronic mapping, synchronization between front and rear aero surfaces. If any of that hesitates mid-corner, the balance shift could be abrupt. At high speed, that margin is razor thin. And preseason testing is forgiving. Races are not. So Ferrari is walking a narrow path. High reward, high risk. And that tension is what makes this so fascinating. Because if the rear wing remains legal, if the exhaust-driven airflow interpretation stands, if the desynchronized aero continues functioning flawlessly, then we are not just talking about a fast car. We are talking about a conceptual advantage that redefines how balance is achieved under these regulations. And that is much harder to neutralize. Red Bull built dominance on aerodynamic stability and efficiency. Now Ferrari is introducing dynamic variability, controlled imbalance that becomes performance. That is a philosophical battle. And philosophical battles are rarely solved overnight. So as preseason testing continues in Bahrain, the stopwatch is only telling part of the story. The real drama is in the garages, in quiet engineering meetings, in simulations running late into the night. Because everyone understands something fundamental. If this works, if Hamilton fully unlocks it, if Leclerc matches it, then the opening race will not just be another Grand Prix. It will be a confirmation that Ferrari did not simply improve. They evolved. And the teams that fail to adapt quickly may spend the rest of the season chasing a concept they never saw coming. Now we reach the most important layer of this entire situation. Pressure, not from rivals, not from the media, but from inside Ferrari itself. Because when you introduce something this radical in preseason testing, you create expectations immediately. And expectations can be dangerous. If the SF26 is truly gaining around 3 to 5 tenths per lap from this full aerodynamic package, that is not marginal. That is the difference between fighting for podiums and controlling races. Vasseur understands that. He knows innovation buys excitement, but only results by stability. And here is where Hamilton's presence changes the equation. When he joined Ferrari, the narrative was emotional, historic, iconic. Now suddenly it is technical, aggressive, forward-thinking. That shift matters in the United States and the United Kingdom. Because this is no longer just a legacy story. It is a performance story. But here is the subtle tension. Leclerc has been the reference inside Ferrari for years. He understands the team's development language. He knows how the car evolved. Now he is sharing the garage with a driver who has mastered multiple aerodynamic eras. If Hamilton unlocks the full potential of this rear wing concept first, internal dynamics change. Not politically, but psychologically. Engineers gravitate toward the driver who extracts the most from innovation. And preseason testing is where those impressions form. Yet none of this survives if reliability falters. The hydraulic complexity behind this system is not trivial. More moving elements mean more failure points. And in modern Formula One, a single retirement can shift momentum dramatically. So Ferrari is balancing two timelines: short-term validation, long-term durability. At the same time, other teams are modeling scenarios. If the governing body issues a technical directive limiting the rotation angle before the first race, Ferrari must react quickly. If no directive comes, rivals must react instead. Either way, someone is forced to adapt under pressure. And here is the final psychological layer. Testing sessions are usually calm, analytical, quietly competitive. But this week in Bahrain feels different. Engineers are watching Ferrari's rear wing activation on every straight. Cameras zoom in repeatedly. Slow motion replays circulate instantly. Because even in pre-season, everyone recognizes when something is not normal. And that is the key word. Not normal. When a car gains top speed without sacrificing stability. When rotation feels artificial. When balance shifts mid-corner seamlessly. You are not looking at incremental development. You are looking at conceptual disruption. Now imagine the first qualifying lap of the season. Equal fuel,